Hello, everybody, and welcome to Catholic Unscripted. I'm Catherine Bennett.
I'm Mark Lambert. Like you didn't know.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You don't know who's here,
Sorry,
Mark.
we're late. Sorry, it's my fault completely.
There might be people who have just tuned in thinking, what's this all about? Well, what it's all about is me, Catherine Bennett, and him, Mr. Mark Lambert, chatting about matters Catholic and cultural. So hello and welcome to all of you joining us on Substack, Facebook, YouTube. We get around. Kieran's joined us. Hello, Kieran, Lindsay Lou, Atom Bomb, BT, Arthur, Carolyn, Edward, and many more. Thank you for joining us once again on this, our Tuesday regular slot at 7:30 every Tuesday evening out of the UK. So wherever you're tuning in from, it's 7:30 here in the evening in rainy old England. And it is dreary, isn't it, Mark?
It's what the Scots call dreek. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
like
so
dank.
It is really, it's just absolutely relentless. And Mark and I were speaking earlier, as dog walkers, this is the worst possible weather. So we're out with the dogs in the mud, and then they come in with the mud, and the mud's everywhere. So we can't begin without talking about the weather. Come on, we're British. So here we are.
Absolutely.
Well, Mark, I'll tell you what we might start by mentioning is our upcoming chat with a superstar. We spoke with a superstar today, didn't we?
We did. Yeah. And it's funny because I know, I've known Kenny for a long while, and it never, and like as a friend, and it just never occurred to me to ask him on as a guest. So I was like, we were chatting, weren't we? And I was like, oh, how about if I invite Kenny Thomas on?
Yeah. There you
So
go.
and it went really well, didn't it? I think, well, you were a bit like, why are we having a chat with this pop star?
No,
you were a little bit like that, and then you were like, "Oh, it's brilliant."
Literally was not at all like that. I said, "Yeah, that's great." I remember Kenny, not Kenny Rogers, no, Campbell, Kenny Thomas. I remembered him. I think we didn't know what direction to take it. Is the point? We weren't sure whether we'd focus on the music, but actually, like every conversation we have, it just found its own rhythm, didn't it?
It had an organic synthesis.
It did. Yes, and he was great. And it's not what you might expect, so tune in because it's sort of, yeah. I mean, you come for Kenny Thomas, pop sensation of the 90s. You stay for the rad trad commentary. So it's really good.
When are we going to put that up? Tomorrow.
That should be going out tomorrow. So look out for that this time tomorrow evening. Really good conversation, just over an hour, with loads of great gems from Kenny Thomas. So that's one to look out for. Many more to come, so we'll keep you updated with those in the days going forward. Who is Kenny Thomas? What? Now you might be in the US, Atom Bomb. Are you one of our US viewers? Because he was a bigger sensation this side of the pond, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he was like massive. He did have a bit of a thing in the States. And really, he broke through in the 90s. So shall I pull up a flash of one of his big videos, so people get an idea of who it is?
Is that the one where he's in the market? It's like a soul sensation, really, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think this is. He'll come up in a minute, I think.
Still touring, by the way. Still.
Yeah, he released his new album last year, 2025. So still making music. He was born in East London, born in Islington, and he lived in Stamford Hill, which is like East London. And he had a series of like soulful pop R&B hits. Outstanding, which was originally by the Gap Band, Thinking About Your Love, which was the one I just played, and Best of You. But fundamentally, like, he was nominated for 2 Brit Awards, Best Male Vocalist and Best British Newcomer. He had loads of hits and sold loads of albums, and you know, he was a really big star, really, like, and sort of still is, still touring and everything. So
you'd know if you heard him. You didn't actually play anything there, Mark Lambert, by the way.
Did that not play?
No, but you guys would go. You'd be tapping your feet and saying, "Oh yes, Kenny Thomas, I remember." And you certainly won't forget when you watch our chat with him.
Can you see it? Has it come up on the screen?
No, you haven't put it up.
Oh, I haven't put it up. That's why. Look. Oh, you put it up.
Mark Lambert.
Right. Okay. Here we go. Sorry, technical nonsense. There we go. This is it. So there you go. This is one of his biggest hits. Thinking about your love. Does look young in that. There you go. Can't play too much, otherwise we'll get copyright infringement.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. So yeah, he doesn't look that much older. I mean, he looks older, but he's still doing well.
Still looking pretty good.
Still looking good, Kenny. So there you go. And it's great to hear from, it's so interesting to hear from a musician in that world. At one point, I think he was signed to, I want to say Warner Brothers, but that's wrong because that's movies, but some big music label in the US. And to have been in that world, touring festivals and everything. And throughout, he was going to the traditional Latin Mass. He knows his Aquinas, he's really learned, he knows his catechism. And it's good to know that there are people in that world who are little shining lights. So yeah, definitely one to watch. Cat Stevens, somebody's just mentioned Cat Stevens in the chat. Cat Stevens, I don't know whether he was raised a Christian, but he became a Muslim, didn't he? Yusuf Islam? Was that?
Yeah, that's it. That's what he converted to, Yusuf Islam, didn't he?
Yeah, so we haven't spoken to him. Yusuf, if you're watching and you want to come and talk to us about
Islam
version, we'll happily have that chat. It's the feast of St. Lawrence today. St. Lawrence, Archbishop of Canterbury. Listen to this, because look, we're about to get into some basically dire misery, aren't we? Because we're going to talk about the German synodal way. We're going to talk about the SSPX. We're going to talk about the bad bishop appointments. We're going to talk about the terrible, is the Pope doing the right thing? We're going to talk about schism. And it's sort of, we don't want to go so far down that path that we forget how beautiful and wonderful our faith is. So I like looking at the saints. St. Lawrence went to England with St. Augustine. And he got a bit down. He doesn't say this. This is me ad-libbing here. He got a bit down when on King Ethelbert's death, Ethelbert's son, Eadbald, refused to follow his father's example in embracing Christianity. So Lawrence was feeling a little bit down about this, and he decided, I'm going to give up and go back to France. But get this is great. On the eve of his departure, St. Peter arrived in a dream and reproached him for designing to forsake that flock for which Christ had laid down his life. Not only did this prevent St. Lawrence from executing his purpose, but it had such an effect on the king that he became a Christian. St. Lawrence didn't survive long. We won't go on with that. But anyway, the point is, how about that? There's St. Lawrence feeling a bit dejected. Oh no, King Ethelbert's died and his son's not interested in Christianity. And St. Peter visits him, wags his finger a bit, and St. Lawrence goes, and this is enough to convert the king. I love this. So there we go. St. Peter. So I wonder what St. Peter might do and who he might appear to today, because we do have a few people that maybe in the church need to be shaken up a bit, don't we, Mark?
Yeah. And it's also St. Blaise. If anyone went to Mass, you get the old blessing of the throats this morning.
Yeah, bless all the throats.
It's a lovely week so far, because we had candle Mass yesterday. And, I hadn't really thought about it, but it was lovely to turn up at Mass and we had a little liturgy in the Lady Chapel before Mass started, and candles and all that, which was really nice. And today is St. Blaise, but also in my diocese, it's a special feast day of St. Anne Line. And I've just posted an article on Catholic Unscripted, which is, I didn't put the paywall on because I wanted everyone to read it. And it's about.
That's why he was late, people.
An incredible saint, St Anne Line. Yeah, that's why I was late. I was distracted by that, but she was amazing. Where she, she was sort of really rich Protestant, and she lost it all when she married a Catholic, and he was exiled and killed, her husband, and you'd have thought that would be enough to finish her off, really, and she'd just go into solitude, but she, quite the opposite. She got even more active in her faith, really, and started looking after priests, feeding them, hiding them. This is in a time when it was completely, you'd get killed for having for harboring a priest, and that's literally what happened to her. And I whenever something like this, a feast day like this comes up, I just think, where has that faith gone?
Yeah.
Like, why? I don't understand why the bishops and stuff like that don't seem to have that. They don't have that faith anymore. And the big thing is, like with St Anne Line, is that she was allowing the sacraments to be given to people. And I just think about the bishops closing the churches at COVID, and you just think it's like them saying that the sacraments don't matter. And if they would change, if our bishops would change and just show us that they believe in the faith, I think we'd see such a massive change. But instead, we've got this, all of these guys, the saints of the English martyrology from the Reformation, all were so incredibly convinced about the truth of the Catholic faith and you look at that now with all the ecumenical nonsense that's going on. And where has that got us, Catherine? It's got us nowhere, is it? The Methodists and the Anglicans and the Episcopalians are all getting more and more wacky. The evangelicals just think that we've given up and we're compromised. It's a sad state of affairs, really, isn't it? We just need to be Catholic. That's all, like St Anne Line was.
Yeah, still, everyone's almost more entrenched than they were. But this time, before, where they, they're almost given some semblance of authority to remain in error. Through that's what it's done. It hasn't. It's not brought people into the church. Also, remembering Blessed John Nelson. Little snippet here of his life. At 40, he went to Douay, hoping to serve his country, went on to study and was ordained a priest, then returned to England. And as you say, where's this? Was apprehended in London on suspicion of being a Catholic. Then imprisoned, tried and condemned for refusing to take the oath of Queen Elizabeth's supremacy, was hung, drawn and quartered on a hurdle from Newgate to Tyburn, where he was hanged, disemboweled and quartered, I've just said. Father Nelson had been admitted to the Society of Jesus before his arrest. Yeah, it's like it's a different world, isn't it? It's just, this just some bloke went to become a priest, went back to England. Oh, well, being in England means I'll probably get killed for my faith. And he did. Horribly, yeah.
Quite extraordinary, really, isn't it?
Story after story. So that's the saints and the martyrs of times gone by, and now we go to our present times. And our present times, we have, apart from speaking to Kenny Thomas, pop sensation of the 1990s, coming out tomorrow, we have the news that's on all the lips of the Catholic podcasters today, which is that the SSPX, Society of Pius X, intend to consecrate new bishops in summer this year, in July. So maybe let's start with that. Mark.
Yeah, it's what everyone, I can't believe the coverage is just wall to wall at the moment about this. And obviously it is a massive, massive move, because it's a long while since they've done this. And this is what led them to be, St. John, like, basically, if they consecrate bishops without the approval of the Holy See, then they are excommunicated latae sententia, which means like automatically. So,
Mark, can I just jump you back, because we've had two questions the same, which I feel need addressing, both I have no idea what the FSSP or the SSPX are, and that's Atom Bomb. And Alan Rowe, who's a recent convert, I understand, if I remember correctly, Alan, I'm still struggling with the Catholic terminology. So we say, I think, sometimes forgetting that when we wheel out FSSP, SSPX, that this means something to everyone. So can we just step back and maybe say what these mean and their origins?
So the SSPX, the Society of St. Pius X, is a Catholic organisation that was started by an archbishop called Lefebvre, who basically was concerned about the modernist direction of the church after Vatican II. So he, you know, sort of he wanted to retain tradition within the church, and fundamentally he put the society into a difficult canonical position by ordaining bishops, and at that point he was automatically excommunicated, as were the bishops who he ordained, if you see what I'm saying. Now the SSPX has thrived, it's gone from strength to strength, so it continues to grow, and certainly Pope Benedict XVI went to great pains to reunite the SSPX with, you know, sort of the mainstream of the church. Now it's not, that's I'm doing this horribly, you know, it's very complex, so please do forgive me, but I'm trying to give you sort of a broad overview, and it's not like you can't. So from a Catholic point of view, you shouldn't really go to mass at an SSPX chapel, but you if you have to, and you did, then the church would say that the sacraments are valid, if that makes any sense. So, but it would suggest that if you can go to your normal parish, that would be a better thing to do. Now, the FSSP, the Fraternal Society of St. Peter, was set up. It's one of the Ecclesia Dei societies, what we call the Ecclesia Dei societies, which were traditionalist societies that came out of Summorum Pontificum fundamentally to promote and retain the traditional Latin Mass. Now, you can imagine that basically the FSSP is supposed to be the SSPX. Like, it's, you know, the hope was that everyone in the SSPX would join the FSSP, if you see what I mean. And the FSSP was in communion with Rome, but they still only say the traditional Latin Mass, if you see what I'm saying. So, but the FSSP is completely in communion with the Catholic Church. The SSPX has got a complex canonical relationship. Although Pope Francis regularized that to a large extent, he said that, you know, you could go to confession in a SSPX to an SSPX priest, and, you know, so anyway, you can see how complex it all is. And for a lot of people, it doesn't really seem all that relevant. Yeah, so that's a great point there from Susan. Like that, if you just Google that, Lefebvre's letter to confused Catholics, that really does lay out what the you know, the problems were. And what you tend to see when something like this happens is that loads of people jump on and they're saying, oh, they're schismatic, you know, the motivation for the way that they're acting is out of love. They're acting because they see danger in the way that the church is sort of going. And you know, you have to say that that's a lot of what we talk about on this channel. That brings us great sadness. I think the only thing we can do is talk about it. You know, the fact that we've got cardinals of the church, like Cardinal Hollerich, for example, who are vocally speaking out against the settled teaching of the church and saying that it's wrong and it needs to change. So this is a massive, massive problem. And obviously there's lots of issues around this ordination. And what like that Rome have caused to make it more difficult, or Pope Francis has caused. And the biggest one, as someone's just mentioned in the comments there, is the fact that they have had this relationship with China, and the Chinese Communist Party has basically been appointing bishops, saying we want this bloke, and getting him ordained as a bishop. And then that they're going, oh, all right then, well, we don't want to fall out with you. For what and the reasons are undisclosed, financial, whatever, we don't know why, because they didn't make the deal that they made with the Chinese Communist Party public. So we'll just say, yeah, that's okay. You can ordain whoever you like. So they've been doing that in regards to China. So now the SSPX are threatening. They haven't done it. They're threatening to do it. Or basically what they're saying is that they have they've been in negotiations with Rome and they've said, look, we want to ordain some more bishops, and Rome has just ignored them. It's just not given them any sort of an answer whatsoever. So they kind of feel like now they've got to amp it up a little bit, and they're basically saying, look, we're going to do this on this date. Come back to us and tell us and give us your okay. So and this question of pressure, we're seeing it across the board now. We're also seeing it with the Germans from the other side of the fence. Exactly the same thing happening with Bishop Batzing, who is absolutely, I mean, these German bishops, if you don't know, they're absolutely
crazy.
Batzing is a good word for him as well. So you've got Cardinal Volke, who's the Cardinal Archbishop of Cologne, and he's sound. He's walked out of the process. He said, this is schismatic. I'm, not having anything to do with it. And then on the other side, you've got Batzing, and he's basically saying that the Pope is going to give him. So, and I'm really proud of this article, Katherine. It's. I think I posted it at the wrong time because no one seemed, or maybe it's that our American viewers and our English viewers aren't really interested in the wacky Germans. But I spent a lot of time on this article detailing exactly what's going on and the pressures that are being brought to bear on Rome because of poor decisions that were made by Pope Francis fundamentally. And that's left Leo in this situation where he's got these pressures from all over the place now. So what's he going to do? So that's Cardinal Volke from Cologne, who's left the process. Have a look at the article. But as I say, I go into proper detail about what's going on there. But they're basically, their synodal way wants to ordain women and get, there's all kinds of madness going on over there. And what the church should have done is just said, look, if you do that, it's schismatic, you're excommunicated. But they haven't done that. The same with the Chinese. So now when the SSPX are saying that they're going to ordain new bishops, what do? It's like the only thing you can actually get excommunicated for is being faithful to the church's teaching. This is the massive irony. And you can be as ecumenical and as, doctrinally liberal, or this doesn't make any sense to normal Catholics, I don't think. And I think it's important that we get these messages out there because the hierarchy need to know that, coherence is really important. What do you think? You'd have thought.
All at home with your popcorn, Cardinals. We know you are. Hope Leo, hello.
Well, I wouldn't presume for a second, but I think like the fact that those articles, guys, have been shared massively on the internet, the ones that I've written on Catholic Unscripted, which I'm so pleased that people have appreciated the work that's gone into them, but they really have been shared around quite a lot. So thank you to everyone who has shared it and read it and commented on one thing and another. But it does make you think that what you're saying, it does make sense to some people, doesn't it? I think that's the point, Katherine. That I'm just observing it from my perspective. I'm not saying that I'm not a liturgist or like an ecclesiologist or anything like that. I'm not a specialist in any of this thing, but Vatican II and canon law says that competent Catholics are at liberty to comment on these things, and I think it's something that needs to be commented on, really, doesn't it? We're not just going to let them get away with it and just do whatever they want to do, because this matters to us as it mattered to St. Anne Line. That's how much it matters to me. Nice. And if they ask us to put our lives on the line, that's what the Catholic faith means, then, the least thing they can do is be true to it, I think, can't they?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant. Do check that out over on catholicunscripted.com, along with the many other excellent pieces you can find over there on what's happening in the church This week, whatever happened to anathema sit, Mark?
Well, that was, yeah. I mean, you know what that is, don't you? That's the canons that used to be in the, at the end of a council, but we didn't have that vacancy because it was pastoral, mate.
Of course, it was. Did you just say mate?
Mate.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. Let's pray for Pope Leo. That is a good reminder to us.
Yeah, and that's pray for everyone, right? Because the SSPX aren't doing this to try and be, you know, like a pain or anything. They're doing it because this is what they believe, and they believe desperately in the church, and we want them to be, you know, because this is about the salvation of souls fundamentally, which is what the head of the SSPX said in his homily about this. So, you know, I think it's really important that we recognize the fact that they're trying to be faithful Catholics, and we want them to be part of the church because they bear great fruit. And if you want to see where the Holy Spirit's working, look to where the fruit is.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I think that it is difficult, Alan. You know, you've just said it's a little complicated because you're just new to the church. Can I just be Catholic? And I think that is the thing to remember. A lot of this, you know, as Mark said, it's quite interesting to draw it to attention and to raise these concerns. And I think it's worrying or confusing for Catholics who see the way in which someone like Father James Martin is not just left alone, but welcomed and almost elevated, and has been under Pope Francis, and very clearly, you know, behaves, acts, speaks in an improper way, and it not in line with the faith. And then you see those who just really want to adhere to the faith being, you know, told, well, this is schismatic. It is difficult. It's very difficult. And you can understand why a faithful Catholic and maybe a convert might say, well, hang on a minute. Why aren't the German bishops being called out? Why isn't this being made clearer? And like you say, look at China. Why is it okay for the CCP to have involvement in choosing bishops when they have actually, you know, that they've synicized, I think it is, the Bible. They've literally rewritten the Bible, the CCP, to like the story of the woman caught in adultery. I think that's one example of a story that's almost completely rewritten to a different conclusion. This is terrible. How can we have a situation where this party have any say in who is a bishop in the church, and then see what's happening with the SSPX here? Maybe it's time to flip from there to Charlotte, because it's more of the same, isn't it? You've got those who want to just be faithful Catholics, as has been the constant practice in the church, who are told, no more of this, no altar rails, no receiving on the tongue, no traditional liturgy. And as you said, Mark, and we'll go again to one of your articles, the things Bishop Martin there is implementing or suggesting go against the USCCB and the instructions in the germ. So let's go from Batzing over to, I'll just draw up your article if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so I mean, this really does blow my. We're going to have Brian Williams, who you've probably seen him on our channel before, but he's the liturgy guy on Facebook, and he's a parishioner in Charlotte who converted to Catholicism. So someone who, you know, really fell in love with the church and the liturgy, and has raised his family, big family. You know, like the bishop there was Peter Jugis, was a brilliant bishop. He was implementing Summorum Pontificum, not in a forceful way, but by saying, you know, if you want to have this, if there's a need for this, then we'll provide it. And several parishes took it up. And Charlotte really was a shining light in America. It's not very populous in terms of, you know, how many people live in the diocese, but it had fantastic vocations rate, wonderful liturgy. It was renowned. You know, Katherine and I met, you know, one particular family that we met in Chicago who were moving to Charlotte because of the liturgy. And then you get a new bishop, Michael Martin, goes in there. He's only been in there for a matter of a few months, and he implements draconian reversals, which cost the diocese money, and basically dismantles what Peter Dugas has built up. And it goes way beyond just saying, right, Traditionis Custodes says we've got to kill the traditional Latin Mass, which to me is, problematic in itself, because this was when Traditionis Custodes was written or introduced. It was demonstrated to be not very well put together by the fact that it caused, most bishops just ignored it, so they kept bringing out new phases to it. There were lots of questions, lots of formal questions were asked. Cardinal Roche said he wasn't going to clarify any further, and then he immediately had to clarify further. And it rumbled on and on and on with numerous letters and clarifications and one thing and another. And that was all done while Pope Benedict XVI, the emeritus bishop at the time, Pope at the time, was still alive. The guy who implemented Summorum Pontificum, which was the main thing of his papacy, really. So it really does seem to be a politically, ideologically motivated, spiteful attack on something which had borne a great deal of fruit, and especially in that Diocese of Charlotte. And yet Bishop Martin goes further than that. And what he does is he says that you can't kneel down, you can't receive on the tongue. And as you said, Catherine, that is something that the USCCB, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, has said, same in the UK as it happens, the same teaching, that the faithful can receive communion either standing or kneeling, in the hand or on the tongue, so that you can't, he's gone beyond what, the stand, like the really sort of bland norms. And we would say, I think both of us would say, that is a journey that you go on, and when you get to the point where you're really serious about the Blessed Sacrament, then you want to receive it kneeling on the tongue. We've spoken about that before. And what does it mean then to be stopped from doing that? That really seems to me to be something pernicious. It really does seem to be something nasty. So he's made these decisions. We're going to talk to Brian Williams about it on Friday, but in the meantime, basically 30 bishops of the diocese, 30 priests of the diocese have written a dubia, and anyone can submit dubia to the Vatican, saying, look, the bishop's saying that these liturgical norms are no longer in effect. Can you make a ruling on it? Can you tell us what to do? So again, another difficult position that's been manufactured by Pope Francis, and Leo now has to rule with it, because this is this sort of progressive liberal, anti-reverence position is the Supich position. And it seems very clear that Pope Leo is mates with Cardinal Supich. I mean, most obviously from the thing with Senator Dick Durbin, where he, was quite happy to go on record and sort of quote the seamless garment to defend Cardinal Supich's giving an honour to this pro-abortion senator, which caused a great deal of ruckus around the world. So there seems to be some sort of alliance there. If Martin has been put in place by Supich, or the Supich mechanism, then if he comes down against that, if he comes down on the side of the people and the USCCB and the liturgical norms of the USA, is he going to get himself into some sort of political hot water? But if he doesn't, it just looks dreadful, doesn't it? It just looks like he's persecuting ordinary Catholics for being Catholic. So how's he going to handle this? It's another similar sort of problem, isn't it?
Yeah. Are you sure your name's Mark, and not Martin? Luther.
Yeah.
Martin.
Why
Luther.
am I?
Yeah, because Paddy Leather thinks so. Paddy Leather's joined us to state forcefully in many a text here that this is the Protestants. No, they don't. This is Luther 2.0. No, they aren't. They're schismatics. I think he's talking about the SSPX. And don't call yourself Catholic. You are complicit in sin. You're going to drag people to hell. So quite forceful here. And it's interesting because this does come up, doesn't it? I don't know that I would encourage people to go to an SSPX parish, but I do think it's not the same as...
we just said don't, didn't we? We just said...
Yeah, we did just say don't. Yeah, we did just say don't. But what we're talking about is understanding, or trying to understand, how we can make sense of this when we see so many of the other strange things going on in the church. So I don't think it's fair to say that Mark is Martin Luther, or me, but let's say Mark because he's the bloke. Because that's not what we do. We're not sending people off in that direction, but we're trying to make sense of it all. And what's interesting is Kenny Thomas, in fact, mentioned this. Paddy Leather, we'll come back to that. Kenny Thomas mentioned this in our conversation today, and it's worth thinking about. We live at this time, and I think our understanding of the way things are managed is not necessarily the way it has always been. In the Middle Ages, for example, Catholic bishops weren't appointed in the way that they are appointed now. It wasn't about micromanaging from Rome. Obviously, there weren't emails going back and forth and WhatsApps, and it had to be more organic than that. And so Rome would intervene when there were disputes, but it tended to be kind of out of the canon, out of the canons at the cathedral, would find the most worthy candidate, not necessarily the most ambitious. So you might argue actually today's method tends to draw those who are most ambitious, but they'd try to find the most worthy. Now, I'm not saying it's a perfect system, but it's a good point that in the medieval times, it might have been decades before it would even be known which bishop was appointed, and it wasn't micromanaged by the Pope. What does it mean to be... Again, I think people need to turn to, I think it's John Rist, is it? I've got the book back here on papal infallibility. You've got it too, and really understand as Catholics what we mean, and what does it mean when we talk about authority. If, for example, let's say Pope Leo said something like John's Gospel is to be struck from the canon. Let's just say he said something bizarre like that, or said after much deliberation, I've decided Jesus was fully human, but not, something that, would that mean, oh, well, then that must be right then?
Well, and Paddy's just plain wrong in a lot of what he's putting in it, like he's saying again and again, the SSPX is schismatic, but, that's a bit more nuanced than that. But the most accurate Catholic answer is no. The SSPX is not formally schismatic.
No, it's not.
We say, as I've already said, it's canonically irregular. They're not the same thing, and the distinction really matters. That, like, the church's own reasoning is that schism in Catholic theology and canon law means a refusal of submission to the Roman pontiff or of communion with the members of the church subject to him. And the SSPX doesn't do either of those things in principle. It prays for the Pope by name, it recognises his office, and it explicitly denies any intention of founding a parallel church. That's why in 2009, Pope Benedict XVI lifted the excommunications incurred in 1988. He wrote an accompanying letter to that, and he was very clear. He said the problem of the SSPX was not schism. That's what Pope Benedict XVI said, but the absence of canonical status and unresolved doctrinal questions. So if the society were schismatic in the strict sense, lifting the excommunications would have been a theologically incoherent thing to do.
Exactly.
So, like, get your facts straight, Paddy, before you start calling everyone else a Protestant,
Absolutely right. Yeah. And needs to be said. I hope, Paddy, that you take on board what's been said here and not just jump to the conclusion that this is about schism. Exactly, irregular, Susan. Somebody mentioned earlier that something about Charles Murr, Father Charles Murr, and asked if we'd be getting him on. Indeed, we will be. In fact, I'm in communication with Father Charles at the moment for him to come and join us at some point when our schedules both allow. I had a lovely conversation with him and John Henry Weston just last week. You may have seen it over on John Henry Weston's channel, LifeSite News and Stations of the Cross. And he was very complimentary about our little show here and says he loves Catholic Unscripted and watches. And I will get him in to chat to him about all things Catholic and also his wonderful book. If you don't have it already, I was gifted it by a good friend from Mass. Hello, Chris, if you're watching, who gave it to me for my birthday this year. And I've been reading it. It's a very easy read and brilliant, called The Godmother. So look out for that. And we will indeed be talking with Father Charles Murr, the wonderful Father Charles Murr. Okay. We have around 10 minutes left. So we've gone from the SSPX over to Charlotte. There's more yet, people. Mark's been a busy man. So let's take a quick look at what we have when law breaks down. Oh, it's also worth reminding people that we have Father Sean Sheehy, who is a priest, an Irish priest, spent quite a lot of time in America and came to, I suppose, public attention when he spoke up just a few years ago and put his head above the parapet, gave a truthful homily and was put down, not in the sense of the way a vet puts things down, but shut down by by his bishop. Thank you, AB.
Yeah, if anyone hasn't seen, Katherine was on the Faith and Reason show. We've been all over the place, haven't we? We've been on with our friend Matt Gaspers. Was that yesterday? We did a live with Matt Gaspers.
Yeah, yesterday, and we've been on Joe McLean, both of us.
Yeah, so we've been all over the place. So check out the other things. I think I'll put them on the Facebook page. I'll try and remember to do that. But yeah, Katherine did a brilliant show, Faith and Reason, with John Henry Weston and Father Charles Murr, and that's where you were chatting to him and he was saying that he watches the show.
Yeah, it was brilliant. So look out, that's another name and many others which we'll update you more on as they become confirmed, because at the moment many of the conversations we're having we're still trying to secure a date. So we'll be back obviously with you next Tuesday and may have some updates for you then. But we've got some great people lined up to speak with. Going back over to our webpage, we have Charlotte, we've got Batzing and the Germans. And we also, you wrote about Roche, Fernandez and the collapse of competence at the heart of the church. And that was very well received. Do you want to say a little about that one, Mark?
Yeah, well, I think this is the way I think that we have to approach the discussion with Rome. And that is to, like, the big problem for me really is that, when I studied theology, I think I've said this before, but the way that I understood it was, I started off with a different opinion, but as I studied, it became more clear to me that theology isn't just something that you make up, that this is a science that allows you to analytically explore metaphysics, what we can and what we can't know about what it means to be a Catholic, what it means to be a human being, what it means to be alive, all these sorts of things. So, that is fundamentally what theology is. And what we've had for the last 12 or 13 years is this extraordinary sloppiness, this disregard for that precision. And that precision has always been something that I've loved about Holy Mother Church. It's something that's been important. The centrality of canon law, because without canon law, everything breaks down. And, you see this with like the Reformation. You see, like, one of the things really the Reformation started not with the, Luther's 99 Thesis being nailed onto the church door at Wittenberg. It really was when he sort of tore up canon law and said that he wasn't going to have any truck with it whatsoever. Ironically, then later he had to install canon. He had to bring out his own form of canon law and introduce it, because that you have to have justice and things have to be run properly. So these things are really important. And Francis was famous for denigrating them, for saying that they didn't matter, that theology didn't matter, that canon lawyers were pharisaical, and sort of attacking all these things within the church. And the result has been this sort of sloppiness. And that's what we see really with the two key figures in the Curia machine at the moment are Cardinal Tucho Fernandez and Cardinal Roche. So you've got the two big problems that we're facing are doctrinal problems and liturgical problems. And the reality is that these two men are not competent for their positions. There are far more competent theologians and liturgists out there than these guys. And we need to keep showing the holes in or that the emperor's hasn't got any clothes on, because I think that's the best way to deal with this. And you see it all the time with Tucho. Every time Fernandez brings out a new document, it causes an uproar in the church, because he doesn't know what he's doing. There's no coherent theological argument behind his direction of travel. And as someone who studied theology, this is very disconcerting for me. And I never thought we'd be in a position where you had people who are head prefects of dicasteries who, don't really seem to know what they're doing. And thank God we've got the magisterium, because what you can do is look back on what, has always been taught and just say, well, this is incoherent. It doesn't fit with what's always been taught. And you can sort of start to look at why it's problematic. So thank God for that. Thank God for the Catholic Church in that sort of respect. But I think we, because of that, we have to say, we really need Pope Leo to sort this out. And the first step towards that, the best thing he could do would be to send Roche and Tucho off somewhere. I heard that there was a diplomatic opening in Iran last week. That'd do. Let's send him off there. Or somewhere similar to that. So, I think that's really what that article is about. But it's perhaps a little bit more of an academic unpacking of the incoherence with the positions that we're, and that you can't have a position that is at odds with what's gone before. That's just simply not Catholic. It's, it is sloppy. And I'm not the only one saying this. It's obvious to everyone who is watching what's going on, and a lot of people are too polite. I think they're trying too hard, and a lot of the time with our beloved priests and some of the bishops, it's because they value unity. That's why they're not saying anything, and perhaps, please God, they're saying something privately. I don't know, but we don't hear about it. But for me, the incoherence is. It's vital that we call it out, because we can't, it's hypocrisy not to just go along with it. We have to say, no, I'm sorry, that's, that doesn't make any sense. Please get these people out of this position and get someone who's competent as soon as possible. As because it just doesn't look good for us. If every document that the dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith publishes gets rinsed, by all and sundry, and the only one who's supporting it are sort of the liberal progressives. I mean, what sort of unity is that? It's just, you're making it up. It's not any sort of unity, is it, at all?
We can largely ignore that. I like this. You two have been on quite a lot of shows with excellent Catholic podcasters. And then R. Campbell said, yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised to see you at the Grammys. we have R. Campbell been around a little bit this week. It's true. And we've built some great relationships with some of the Americans. We go back and forth, and again, we'll be drawing from our pool of friends over there and the connections we've made to have some more great interviews, as well as many here in the UK and across Europe. So more on that next week. For my 2 pennies worth, I found time to comment on King Charles's upcoming documentary on it's almost too tedious to even mention his upcoming documentary on Amazon. So that should be out this month, and he's talking about the environment. So that's a way in to looking at the way in which we look to replace God with nature, with Mother Nature, and lopsided deification of nature, or the tyranny of nature and the raping of nature. So it's about what is the correct response. So that's my little 2 pennies worth. Not telling you much about what's coming out of Rome, but more about what's coming out of King Charles III's head.
Well, it's all part of the same, trajectory, really, isn't it? And obviously, what's interesting about it is the way that we've seen, the mainstream church adopt this trajectory as well, like this. And we always have to be careful when we talk about environmentalism, because I'm always keen to stress the fact that good stewardship is very, that is the Catholic. That is the Catholic thing. That's what we've been given this great gift, and we've got to look after it. But, it's the blessing of the icebergs and the shaking of blue sheets. And
it's the hypocrisy at the heart of it. Even the fact that this is being streamed on Amazon, massive disposer of waste, lawsuits about migrant workers and mistreatment of workers, and pumping out. So it's just the hypocrisy at the root of a lot of this, I think people are fed up with, and the levies that make it impossible to live, impossible to flourish, impossible to have a family. And if we want to really steward properly, then it needs to be smaller. Everything needs to be smaller. We need to take seriously that principle of subsidiarity. We need to get the state off our backs. We don't want to be enslaved by the state. We want the family as a building block of society. We don't want an imposition. We want to say, yes, let us tend our land. Let us raise our children. Let us educate our children. Let us be, follow the liturgical year and the rhythms of nature without this global top-down imposition. So it's we can see it for what it is. We can see it as often virtue signalling, and not having God at the centre. Like Matt Gaspers said, if you want to find harmony, why don't you start by finding harmony with God? Why isn't that number one? Because as St. Matthew says, seek ye first the kingdom and the rest will follow. But that has to come first. So if we're seeking first net zero, that's only going to end in disordered consequences, which we see and which we've seen, and people are fed up of it. So I tend to do more cultural commentary for those of you who've just joined, and look at how as in a sense, as the church goes, so the world follows, and we can see as society crumbles around us and the West has lost. It's absolutely not just coincidental that as we've fallen away from our faith, we're seeing the scattering and the division and the incoherence in our society. And so the answer is always to return to Christ. That's the answer. There's no answer anywhere else. That's the only answer that's going to be coherent.
Absolutely, yeah. And it really worries me when, because it's sort of, what does it tell people? It tells people that we can solve the problem on our own, which robs the cross of its power. And it's like, all you need to do is stop using straws or whatever. Like they're petty fixes when you've got industry pumping out CO2. Like if they're serious about this, they want to stop banging on at the ordinary person who's struggling to earn a living or whatever, and they want to focus on major industry and manufacturing and the way that these things work. So
yeah, well, that's it for today, I suppose. We're up at 8:30. That's been an hour, and we will have more to report next week, I suppose, won't we, Mark? With whatever's gone on between now and then.
Definitely will, yeah.
But for now, thank you for joining us once again. Do check out our website, catholicunscripted.com, where you can see in full all the commentary that we have discussed today, and in much more detail, and keep an eye on the website throughout this week. And if you want to read, there's quite a lot of it is there and it's available, and all our stuff on YouTube is available. But if you want to get into some of the more some of the detail, then just pick up a subscription, and that way you get to access everything, but also support us in what we do, because we really do need your small support, a little bit of support from many of you will mean that we are able to do this and devote the time it takes to do this. So thank you. And good night.
Good night. God bless.